A big part of effective storytelling and video editing is being able to guide the viewer's eye through the frame from shot to shot. Okay, this way.
If you fail at this, then your shot sequence will become unclear and your audience may miss important story elements or miss the plot complete. Come on. Or miss the plot completely. And what was the point of that little intro sequence there? The point is to demonstrate what I'm going to cover in this video, which is a concept called eye trace. I'm going to show you what I mean. We're going to go outside. I'm not going to go outside. It's freezing. Let's cut to B-roll. Pay attention to the movement in these shots. Look at me. Do you see me? How about here? Where am I? Once more. Where am I? Did you notice how each time the shot changed, you had to look throughout the frame to find me? This is an example of eye trace, which is a filmmaking technique used to guide the viewer's eye to any point within the frame. In this case, I told you where to look, at me walking through the frame. So if you listened, that means I had complete control over your focus, and your eye trace trail should have looked something like this. But it's not as simple as just telling the viewer where to look. We need to be able to guide the viewer's focus visually. Understanding what the viewer's eye is naturally drawn to will help you control their attention and edit with their point of focus in mind from one shot to the next. It's the ability to anticipate what the audience will pay attention to within the frame. What are our eyes drawn to? Well, we're going to get to that, but first, follow me through the same sequence with the same shots, but re-edited. Do you see me? Okay, how about here? Where am I? Once more, where am I? How much does your eye need to move this time from one shot to the next? Barely at all, right? I mean, you can pretty much follow the movement throughout the sequence from shot to shot, and it's seamless. And in this way, we're using eye trace to create a smoother edit, essentially building a visual bridge between each shot in the sequence. And as video editors, we don't always have complete control over eye trace within a shot, but being aware of it and knowing where the eye trace point sits in the frame helps us edit with it in mind. We can take control of it when it serves the story, and that's incredibly important for creating smooth, intentional edits. Each time we cut to a new shot, our eye needs to land on something, and typically our eyes are drawn to color, contrast, movement, or even something as simple as people, facial features, or just the cutest thing in the frame. We can use this information to figure out which part of the frame the audience will naturally look at, and that helps us make an informed edit. In the example of me walking through the frame, that was designed with eye trace in mind. I'm wearing a bright colored vest, and I chose to film barren landscapes with barely any color and very little detail, with not really any points of interest in a very two-dimensional way. So I wouldn't look at this as great cinematography in any way, and not to mention great fashion sense. This is strictly for demonstrating eye trace. I'm also walking through the frame, so we're creating that movement that pulls the eye. The cut becomes almost invisible because the eye doesn't have to travel far from one shot to the next. It feels smooth. And the benefit of a smooth edit is that it encourages the viewer to focus on the action, not on the cuts, so they can get lost in the story on the screen. A smooth edit is just one small piece of the puzzle though, and even though this sequence is somewhat satisfying to watch, it kind of irks me. And I'm gonna get into the reason why later. Eye trace more often than not is created by design, where the best filmmakers will consider how to direct the eye throughout the frame to clearly tell a story, sometimes where cuts aren't even necessarily needed. Very practically speaking, how do you apply eye trace as an editor? Well, you first become in tune with what your eye is drawn to in the frame. Once you know that, you have a much higher degree of certainty about where the viewer is paying attention at any moment. That alone is huge. You now have a good idea of what the viewer is looking at and whether your shot choice is actually communicating the story. When cutting random shots together or montage editing, you can use eye trace to bridge shots. So take these shots for example. I chose them on purpose because of the sparks. They're almost guaranteed eye trace points. If I time the edits with eye trace in mind, the viewer's eye barely needs to travel from one shot to the next, bridging each eye trace point within the shot sequence. To do this, I can overlap shot 1 over shot 2 and lower the opacity so I can see both shots at the same time. Then I nudge the clips around until the eye trace points line up, and after that, I cut on the eye trace point and return the opacity to normal. So now both shots are bridged on their eye trace points. And if you really want to finesse an eye trace point where two shots don't quite match, you can manipulate the frame. If you're working with higher resolution footage and a lower resolution timeline, you'll have the extra crop room to rescale or reposition the composition, being able to bring the eye trace points closer together. Now that I've shown you how to do this, I'm gonna say don't force it just because you can bridge the shots together using eye trace. Sometimes it makes sense to cut from, say, this shot to the next shot, in this example, and the eye trace point was a happy accident, I guess. But the story determines the shots you choose first. Only then should you ask, hey, can these shots connect using eye trace? You also do not want to mistake matching eye trace points as immediately being a smooth edit. That's not quite how it works. I'm talking about what is guiding the attention of your viewer. Sometimes when you match eye trace points together from one shot to the next, that creates a smooth edit, but you also need to be considering what else contributes to a smooth edit. For example, right here, I have this shot sequence I created. I matched the eye trace points, and in some ways, yes, it is smooth, but you need to also look at this. Skateboarder is going from left to right, and then in this shot, from right to left. When we're changing directions like that, that can create a jarring or harsh edit. You also want to consider the direction of movement from one shot to the next. One way we could possibly change this is to flip the image. Both of these shots are moving from left to right. That needs a bit more work. Just a quick example there. So consider the direction of movement. I also have this example here where the shots are bridged on their eye trace points. To me, that is still a bit jarring. Bridging the eye trace points certainly helps a little bit, but another thing to consider when creating a smooth edit is these jump cuts. Notice anything strange about this angle here? It's very similar to this angle. I mean, this is a higher aerial angle. This shot here is not that big of a change. When the shot angle isn't a big enough difference, it can also create a jarring edit. So consider that when you're creating a smooth edit. You don't just want to match eye trace points without considering whether you're adding jump cuts or not. And finally, we have this shot here, which isn't necessarily at first glance using eye trace, and I'll show you what I mean. Because at first glance you think, okay, we lost the eye trace point and now suddenly we have it again. Well, what happens when your eye trace point moves behind an object is our eye will move to a new eye trace point. In this case, what's happening is our eye moves from the sparks to this lighter part of the bridge. I find my eye moving downward to around here. If we keep moving through the shot, since it keeps moving downward, it's revealing this brighter, higher contrast area. My eye is somewhere around there. It doesn't have to move too far. So it's kind of stuck on this brighter highlight of the bridge. But what also happens with this kind of shot where the eye trace point changes and there's not really a strong point of interest within the frame, not much texture, it's a darker frame, it then almost becomes more of like a palette cleanser for the eyes. There's not really a whole lot of points of interest within the shot now that the sparked skateboard is out of frame. Then what does our eye do? Well, it'll typically move more toward the center of the frame. If it's at the center of the frame, then it still doesn't have to move too far. But story-wise, I like this shot because it creates that contrast. We lose the action for a moment, and I can already imagine in my head what the sound design would be like for this. You're creating that contrast between two shots. To me, that's more interesting for the story than simply saying, oh cool, we can match the eye trace points. This is why you need to approach eye trace with nuance and prioritizing story first. It's a really powerful technique to employ in your edits. You don't just want to use it just because you can. You want to consider the story you're telling first. And this is why that short sequence at the beginning of this video kind of irks me, especially on its own. It doesn't have a purpose beyond creating a smooth, visually interesting bridge between each shot. And I feel the same way when I see a quick match cut on social media timed to a fast, exciting beat. It just irks me for the same reason, because a lot of what you see in a 30-second clip is designed to keep your attention visually, but not necessarily with any real purpose behind it. Or the purpose can be just very shallow. eye trace gets used in a match cut that's visually striking and smooth, you're kind of tricked into thinking it's a great edit, but it doesn't do much beyond that. And when there's no deeper intention behind it, it ends up feeling shallow, where you get this sense of style over substance. So I feel at least a little bit better about the sequence because its purpose is more than just holding your attention. It's here to teach you about eye trace, that
Invisible magnet that guides the eye throughout the frame to this video right here. Oh yeah. Rolling. Did I hit record? I don't think I even hit. Oh, I did.